Okay, welcome all of you once again. Thank you everyone for joining this Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today's Srimad Bhagavatam class will be given by His Grace Chaitanya Lila Das Prabhuji on verse from 4.21.47 onwards. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you are there on the call.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhujis and Matajis, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much Prabhuji for giving your valuable time and association in this Bhakti Sangha conference call. We are really fortunate to have you on this call Prabhuji. Thank you so much. You can start over Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we are reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Text 47. The verse goes, Hiranyakashipuschapi Bhagavan Nindaya Tamaha Vivikshur Atyagat Suno Prahlad Asyanubhavataha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, who by dint of his sinful activities always defied the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered into the darkest region of hellish life, but by the grace of his great son, Prahlad Maharaj, he was also delivered and went back home, back to Godhead. Purport. When Prahlad Maharaj was offered benediction by Narasimhadev, due to his great devotion and tolerance, he refused to accept any benediction from the Lord, thinking that such acceptance was not befitting a sincere devotee. The rendering of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in expectation of a good reward is deprecated by Prahlad Maharaj as mercantile business. Because Prahlad Maharaj was a Vaishnava, he did not ask a benediction for his personal self, but was very affectionate toward his father. Although his father tortured him and would have killed him had he himself not been killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prahlad Maharaj begged pardon for him from the Lord. This favor was immediately granted by the Lord, and Hiranyakashipu was delivered from the darkest region of hellish life, and he returned back home, back to Godhead, by the grace of his son. Prahlad Maharaj is the topmost example of a Vaishnava, who is always compassionate towards sinful persons suffering a hellish life within this material world. Krishna is therefore known as Paradukha Dukhi Kripam Buddhi, or one who is compassionate toward others' suffering and who is an ocean of mercy. Like Prahlad Maharaj, all pure devotees of the Lord come to this material world with full compassion to deliver the sinful. They undergo all kinds of tribulations, suffering them with tolerance, because that is another qualification of a Vaishnava, who tries to deliver all sinful persons from the hellish conditions of material existence. Vaishnavas are therefore offered the following prayer. Vancha kalpataru bhyascha kripa sindhu evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The chief concern of a Vaishnava is to deliver the fallen souls. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatharini. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advait Gadadhar Srivasa Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So I'll just read the translation once again. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, who by dint of his sinful activities always defied the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered into the darkest region of hellish life, But by the grace of his great son, Prahlad Maharaj, he also was delivered and went back home, back to Godhead. So here in this beautiful section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are seeing that how the demigods are praising Prithu Maharaj for his words, and they are sure that his father, King Vena, although he was very sinful, he must have been delivered from a hellish condition of life. And Prithu Maharaj herein is compared with Prahlad Maharaj, that how Hiranyakashipu, he also defied the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was atrocious to all the demigods and his own son. And he tortured Prahlad Maharaj in unimaginable ways and would have killed him had he not been killed by Narsimhadev himself. But what is the reaction of Prahlad Maharaj here? That instead of feeling envious towards his father, he is affectionate towards his father. And Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport that how this is the topmost example of a Vaishnava, that how a Vaishnava is compassionate towards sinful persons suffering a hellish condition now as well as in their later life. So we find that these qualities, these Vaishnava qualities have been enunciated time and again in the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially the quality of compassion. It is mentioned that what demarcates or what is the difference between a cultured and an uncultured society. A cultured society is compared to a society of dolphins. If we look at the behavior of the dolphins, it is noted that whenever they see a weaker member, a weak dolphin amongst their community, amongst their group, the dolphins, they provide support and encouragement and help that weaker member to come up and grow. But the uncultured society is compared to a society of crows. The characteristic of a crow-like society is that whenever there is a crow who is weak and who is tired, it is observed that the other crows, they pounce on that weak and tired member and they attempt to kill him and feast on him. So that is the symptom of an uncultured society. Earlier on Sri Narad Muni, he is advising Dhruv Maharaj also as to how he should be dealing with others. And Narad Muni is mentioning to Dhruv Maharaj that when you see those better than you, you should feel happy. And when you meet those inferior to you, you should be compassionate and make nice friends with equals. So in this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada is comparing or he is referring to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by a very beautiful adjective. He is referring to the Lord as Daya Nidhi. He is referring to the Lord as Kripa Ambudhi. Kripa Ambudhi. Ambudhi refers to an ocean and Kripa means compassion. So that Supreme Lord, who is an ocean of compassion, therefore his name is Kripa Ambudhi. And similarly, the devotees are also Kripa Ambudhi. Just like the clouds are there, the clouds, they take the moisture from the ocean and they shower rain on the land, on the surface. So similarly, the devotee, because of being in close contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotee also imbibes and manifests this quality of compassion. Just like the clouds, they get water by the evaporation and condensation of ocean water. Similarly, the devotees, they also exhibit this quality of compassion. And here the beautiful example of Prahlad Maharaj is being presented. That how Prahlad Maharaj is not wanting anything for himself. He is wanting welfare for his father, Hiranyakashipu. Actually, the compassionate nature of Prahlad Maharaj is one step higher. Prahlad Maharaj is not just wanting the welfare of his father Hiranyakashipu, but it is said that Prahlad Maharaj is desiring the well-being of all living beings. In one of the chapters in the fifth canto, there is a chapter wherein the residents of Jambudweep, they are offering their prayers to the Supreme Lord. And in one of the Varshas, in one of the lands of Jambudvip, which is the Hari Varsha, so Hari Varsha is being ruled or governed by Prahlad Maharaj. And therein, as the ruler of Hari Varsha, Prahlad Maharaj is worshipping Narasimhadev. And there the compassionate nature of Prahlad Maharaj is very much visible. It is said that a Vaishnava desires well-being not just for his immediate family members, but for all living beings, because they are able to see the bigger picture, that how all living beings are actually connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Gita mentions, Mamaivamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manah Sasthani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. So on these lines, Prahlad Maharaj, as the ruler of Hari Varsha in Jambudvip, he is referring to this very beautiful verse. This is the 5th canto, 18th chapter, 9th verse. And the verse goes, Swastiyastu Vishwasya Khalah Prasidatam Dhyayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodhiya Manascha Bhadram Bhajatad Adhokshaje Aveshyatam no Matirapya Haituki. The translation Prabhupada writes, may there be good fortune throughout the universe, and may all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing Bhakti Yoga, for by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the Supreme Personality of Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thoughts of Him. And it is very wonderful how this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada begins the purport where he leaves off in the verse that we are reading today, the verse that we just read, the 4th canto. So Prabhupada ends that verse with the verse describing a Vaishnava, Vanchakalpatirubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. And here in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj as the ruler of Jambudvip, Prabhupada also begins by quoting this particular verse, that just like a desire tree, a Vaishnava can fulfill all the desires of anyone who takes shelter of his lotus feet. Prahlad Maharaj is a typical Vaishnava. He prays not for himself but for all living entities, the gentle, the envious and the mischievous. And he always thought of the welfare of the mischievous persons like his own father Hiranyakashipu. So here Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that whenever one offers a prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one always requests some benediction from Him. Like whenever we pray to the Supreme Lord, we always have something that we ask from the Supreme Lord. Even Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that even pure or nishkama devotees who don't have any desires for personal gratification, they also pray for some benediction. And the same has been instructed also by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sikshashtaka. And Lord Chaitanya, he says, Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patita mam vishame bhavam budho kripaya tava pada pankaja sthita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from the ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. In another prayer, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatad bhakti rahituki toi. Life after life, kindly let me have unalloyed love and devotion at your Lordship's lotus feet. But when we look at this example of Prahlad Maharaj, when Prahlad Maharaj chants Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya, he prays for a benediction from the Lord, but because he is also an exalted Vaishnava, he doesn't want anything for his personal gratification. And the first desire, the very first desire that Prahlad Maharaj is expressing in his prayer is Swasti Astu Vishwasya. Let there be good fortune throughout the entire universe. And that is how Prahlad Maharaj is requesting the Lord to be merciful to everyone, including his own father, who is the most envious person. Now, what is the prerequisite for such a compassionate appeal to the Lord, for having such a compassionate attitude? What is required? So it is said that one can only pray for someone else's welfare when one doesn't have any feeling of insecurity for oneself. If one has a tinge of insecurity, first of all, the person will try to find a solution to it first. Because insecurity or fear is a result or is a byproduct of trying to navigate on one's own capability, trying to navigate through this unpredictable material world. The material world is described padam padam yad vipadam na tesham. The material world is a completely unpredictable place, and is, what dangers lie ahead of us is very difficult to ascertain. And when one tries to go through such an unpredictable uh, terrain or unknown terrain, there is always fear. There is an example that is given that many years back, when it was believed that the earth is flat, so all these sea sailors, the sailors uh, in Europe especially, the European sailors, they didn't venture out into the sea for long distances, because there was this conception that because the earth is flat, if we venture out long for far distances into the sea, we might reach up a point beyond which there is nothing, and we may just trip off, we may just fall off. And because of this fear, the sailors wouldn't go out for long distances, unless of course Christopher Columbus, he really sailed and managed to discover the land of America. So that is how fear is born out of navigating through an unknown terrain. And one can be completely free of such insecurity, one can be completely free of fear only when one is under the very strong shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And a beautiful example in this regard is given just like a child. When a child cries for his mother, sometimes I typically give this example, sometimes in marriage parties we see a small baby just starts to cry, and the mother is somewhere at a distance, and there are a lot of other people who try to help the child become quiet, but the child keeps on crying, and the pitch, the voice keeps on increasing, the volume of the child's cry just keeps on increasing, and all that the child is wanting is its mother. No matter who else tries to comfort the child doesn't stop crying. But the moment the mother hears the cry of the child, the mother rushes, she puts down everything, and she rushes to attend to the child. And immediately, as the mother holds on or takes the child in her lap, immediately the volume is reduced to zero. Immediately the child is quiet. And similarly, when the living entity, because he is uh, struggling hard in this material world to remain happy, he is being tormented by the various miseries of the material nature. But as soon as the living entity reaches under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it experiences complete sense of security. And that is how in one of the very beautiful bhajans, one of our acharyas, Govinda Das, he sings, Bhajahu re mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. So he's recommending that, my dear mind, please worship the lotus feet of Nanda Nandana Krishna, because the nature of the lotus feet of Nanda Nanda is that it is Abhaya Charan, it awards fearlessness. And he further describes that how any other shelter in this world is very much temporary. He goes on to describe the futility of trying to seek shelter in wealth, in adulthood, in family, in relatives, ye dhana yauvana putra parijana ache kab parati tire. So it describes that all other shelter are very much temporary. It is like, again, if someone who has been traveling in a boat in the ocean and the boat capsizes. So when the boat capsizes, if the person is trying to hold on to the floating articles that were present on the boat, holding on to those floating articles won't help him. One has to look out for an external help. When the external help comes from above, maybe through a helicopter or a larger ship, that is how, when the person whose boat has capsized, when he holds on to a stronger shelter, that is when he will be protected. And this experience of security in that shelter becomes an inspiration for others. When one experiences that security in complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is when he also gets inspired to see others suffering and bring others also within the shelter of the Supreme Lord. And that is one of the meanings of the word ashram. In the varnashram system, the scriptures recommend the varnashram system. So in this varnashram system, the ashram refers to twofold. The word ashram is composed of two different words. Ashram is composed of ashray and shram. So ashray refers to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and shram refers to performing one's duty. And what is the highest duty? The highest duty is not those activities which are of welfare for just oneself, but also that is of ultimate welfare for others. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions, Janma sarthak kari karo paropkar. So this is the paropkar. The paropkar, or the highest welfare activity, is when one actually helps others to also come within the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he mentions that how these two factors, shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and compassion for other living beings, this is the essence of all religious practices. Sarva dharma sar. Jive daya Krishna Nam. Krishna Nam refers to the shelter of the Lord, and Jive daya refers to compassion. So Jive daya Krishna Nam, these two aspects should be the essence of all religious practices. If anyone is performing something in the name of religion, but these two aspects are missing, maybe the practitioner is missing out on the essence. Coming back to the example of Prahlad Maharaj, that how Prahlad Maharaj here is pleading for his own father before Sri Narasimhadev. And according to Chanakya Pandit, it is mentioned that there are two kinds of envious living entities. Chanakya Pandit mentions that one category of envious living entity is a snake, and the other is a man like Hiranyakashipu, who by nature is envious of everyone, even of his father or son. So Hiranyakashipu was envious of his little son Prahlad, but Prahlad Maharaj asked a benediction for the benefit of his father. Hiranyakashipu was very envious of all the devotees, not just Prahlad, but Prahlad wished that his father and other demons like him would give up their envious nature and stop harassing the devotees. Khala prasidatam. So how could this have been possible, that Prahlad Maharaj is wishing that his father and other demons should give up their envious nature? So it is said that amongst these two envious living beings, Khala, one kind of Khala or envious being, the snake, can be pacified simply by mantras or by the action of a particular herb. It is said that there are some particular herbs, mantra aushadhi vasha sarpah khala kena nivaryete. So a snake can be pacified by mantras or the action of a particular herb. But an envious person, however, cannot be pacified by any means. And therefore Prahlad Maharaj prays that all envious persons should undergo a change of heart and think of the welfare of others. Srila Prabhupada is writing in the purport of this particular verse, and he is connecting it to the Krishna consciousness movement. If the Krishna consciousness movement spreads all over the world, and if by the grace of Krishna everyone accepts it, the thinking of envious people will change. Everyone will think of the welfare of others. Therefore Prahlad Maharaj prays, Shivam mitho dhiya. In material activities, everyone is envious of others, but in Krishna consciousness, no one is envious of anyone else. Everyone thinks of the welfare of others. Therefore Prahlad Maharaj prays that everyone's mind may become gentle by being fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna. Bhajatad adhokshaje. So some people may argue that if everyone thought of Krishna in that way, now the whole universe would be vacated because everyone would go back to Godhead. But Srila Chakravarti Thakur, he says that this is impossible because the living entities are innumerable. If one set of living entities is actually delivered by the Krishna consciousness movement, immediately the whole universe will be filled by another set of living entities. And materialists, they always think of sense gratification, but Prahlad Maharaj is praying that the Lord's mercy will change their minds and they will stop thinking of sense gratification. If they think of Krishna always, everything will be alright. So here Prahlad Maharaj is actually revealing the secret to mind control. There is a lot of discussion happening all over the world. How to control the mind. The mind is, one's enemy, and it doesn't help us in our practice of Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj is here revealing that how the mind, when the mind is cleansed of all envy by engaging in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Manascha bhadram bhajatad adhokshaje. Adhokshaja is the name of the Supreme Lord. So when the Supreme Lord is worshipped by the process of devotional service, that is how the mind is cleansed of all envy. In the Sri Ishopanishad, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord, is described as Shuddham. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains that the word Shuddham has two meanings. One of the meaning of the word Shuddham is that it is antiseptic, that even an impure thing can become purified just by touching him. So similarly, when the mind, just when it comes in contact with the Supreme Lord, by thinking of the name, the Nama, Rupa, Guna, and Lila, the name of the Supreme Lord, the form of the Supreme Lord, the qualities of the Supreme Lord, and the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, when the mind is engaged in such a manner, that is how the mind immediately becomes purified. The second meaning of the word Shuddham is that the Lord himself is most purified. And Prabhupada compares that, it is often compared to the sun, that just as the sun extracts moisture from many untouchable places on the earth, yet it remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by virtue of its sterilizing powers. And if the sun, which is a material object, is so powerful, then we can hardly begin to imagine the purifying strength of the all-powerful Supreme Lord. And therefore Prahlad Maharaj prays that we should therefore pray to Lord Narsimhadev to sit in our hearts. We should pray Bahir Narsimha, Hridaye Narsimha. Let Lord Narsimhadev sit in the core of my heart, killing all my bad propensities. Let my mind become so clean that I may peacefully worship the Lord and bring peace to the entire world. And in order to do so, Prahlad Maharaj also gives the processes of executing devotional service, starting with this hearing process. And Prahlad Maharaj goes on to explain the different processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and how this process of hearing about the Supreme Lord is actually so potent that it eventually cleanses the mind of all envious tendencies, so that the mind is able to think of one's own ultimate welfare and the welfare of others in a compassionate manner. So this is basically a cyclic process. The more one hears, the more the mind gets cleansed, and the more the mind is cleansed, more one is able to actually relish what one is hearing. And the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam describes that how these pastimes of the Supreme Lord that have been described in the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually meant for, and these pastimes can actually be relished only by persons who are completely free of envy. Parama nirmat saranam satam. So only those people who are completely free of envy can relish the beautiful pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord himself, Sri Krishna, he also recommends this process in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein he mentions Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishi satyam te pratijani prayosime, that always think of me, become my devotee, offer your obeisances unto me. Just by executing these simple processes, one will eventually come back to me. And because of being situated on this spiritual platform, because of being situated on the spiritual platform of service, rendering the service to the Supreme Lord through the sevenfold process of devotional service, a devotee actually raises himself from the bodily platform. And a devotee is not overly engaged in taking care of the body for showing one's greatness before others. We see today that how people are so engaged in just taking care of their bodies, and the flourishing of the cosmetic industry is very much a testimony to this fact, that how people are so deeply engaged in this bodily consciousness. But for a devotee is not accustomed to just taking care of his body. A devotee is engaged in actually serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And for such a devotee, the ornament for such a devotee is his character, is his behavior, is his compassion for others. This compassionate attitude of a devotee is what makes him special. And when one renders service to such a special devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such service actually opens the doors to liberation. In the 5th canto, there is another beautiful verse which mentions that Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamo Dwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachittah Prashanta Vimanyaya Suhrida Sadhavo Ye. So in this particular verse, the definition of a Mahatma, there are 5 attributes of a Mahatma that have been mentioned. So who is a Mahatma? This particular verse explains that a Mahatma is Samachittaha. He is equipoised. A Mahatma doesn't see any difference between one living entity and another. A Mahatma is Prashantaha. He is very peaceful and is fully engaged in devotional service. A Mahatma is Vimanyavaha. He is devoid of anger. And Prabhupada writes that one must distribute Krishna consciousness to persons who are hostile without becoming angry at them. So such a Mahatma is very special. Another quality of a Mahatma in this verse is a Mahatma is Sadhava. He doesn't behave in any abominable way. And finally, a Mahatma is Suhrida. He works for the benefit of everyone. And the Shastras give n number of such examples of the different Mahatmas. In the Mahabharata, there is the example of Vidura, that how Vidura, after the Pandavas have been exiled, Vidura, he sees Duryodhan, trying to assert the kingdom, and one fine day, Duryodhan is like really angry on Vidura, and he like really chastises Vidura, left, right, and center. And Vidura considers this as the action of the material energy of the Supreme Lord, and he leaves the kingdom of Hastinapur. And he goes, and all through this while when the battle of Hastinapur is going on, Vidura is not present there. And at one point of time, when everything is like settled, when all the Kurus, they like they're defeated and they give up their lives, and Yudhishthir Maharaj is once again the ruler of Hastinapur. Vidura is still thinking about his elder brother Dhritarashtra, and it is explained that Vidura comes back to Hastinapur just to deliver his brother Dhritarashtra. And when Vidura comes there, he actually goes to the palace of Dhritarashtra and he chastises Dhritarashtra. Vidura chastises Dhritarashtra that why are you living like a dog? You are living like a dog at the expense of your own enemies. All through your life, you hated the Pandavas. All through your life, you didn't desire any welfare of the Pandavas. And today, just for your maintenance, you are living like a dog, within your enemies. So someone may question that, Vidura is a devotee. How is it that Vidura is like, categorizing, or Vidura is labeling the Pandavas as an enemy? And how is it that Vidura is chastising his own brother Dhritarashtra? Now this is only because Vidura also possesses this characteristic of a Mahatma. He is also Suhrida. He is very much concerned, he is very much bothered about his brother Dhritarashtra. And Vidura is wondering that what is the hope for Dhritarashtra now? All through his life, Dhritarashtra was so determined. In fact, the very meaning of the word Dhritarashtra, Dhrita refers to determination. So one who was very determined to have the throne of Hastinapur, either for himself or for his son Duryodhan. Such a person, all through his life, just wanted to rule a kingdom. And he didn't resort to any spiritual activity. And at the fag end of his life, he is just dragging on, he is just carrying on, and there is no chance that Dhritarashtra can actually attain any spiritual emancipation. And that is why Vidura comes to Dhritarashtra, and he really gives a very hard dose of preaching to Dhritarashtra, and it has an effect. And the very next morning, when Yudhishthir Maharaj, every morning Yudhishthir Maharaj, the Mahabharata mentions that even though Dhritarashtra all his life had been envious of the Pandavas, still as a man of dharma, as a man of duty, Yudhishthir Maharaj every morning he used to go to Dhritarashtra to seek his blessings as an elder, as seeking blessings from a elderly person. So the next morning when Yudhishthir Maharaj goes to the palace of Dhritarashtra, he finds that all these three, elderly people, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari and Vidura, they are missing. And Yudhishthir Maharaj, it doesn't take much time for Yudhishthir Maharaj to understand that, they have left the kingdom. And Yudhishthir Maharaj is lamenting that maybe I didn't take care of them properly, and that is why they have deserted me. But here the example of Vidura is very much significant, that how as a compassionate devotee, Vidura at the fag end of his life, he was bothered about his brother Hiranyakashipu, just like his brother Dhritarashtra. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, even after Hiranyakashipu has been killed, Prahlad Maharaj is concerned about his whereabouts. Prahlad Maharaj is concerned that my father shouldn't go down deep into the hellish planets. He is concerned that my father should also be a recipient of the Lord's mercy. Similarly, here we see the example of Vidura, that how Vidura also, he is concerned about the well-being of his brother. Even though all through his life, his brother, he didn't, you know, um, Dhritarashtra never gave any position to Vidura. Dhritarashtra never acknowledged the brilliance or the intelligence of Vidura. But still, at the fag end of his life, uh, Vidura actually expresses his compassion before Dhritarashtra, and that is how Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they actually take on to the process of devotional service at the end of their lives. So it is said that better late than never. In our own lives, we may also come across many opportunities, many recommendations by such compassionate devotees. But because the mind is unpurified, because the mind is not very cleansed, we may not pay so much heed. But then we see the example of Dhritarashtra, that even at a later point of time, he actually is able to understand the intent of such a compassionate devotee, and he actually accompanies Vidura out of the kingdom and into the northern side of the Himalayas for his own spiritual practice. Another beautiful example of a compassionate Mahatma is very much evident in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Vasudeva Datta. That how Vasudeva Datta, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he meets Vasudeva Datta, Vasudeva Datta is so worried about all the living beings in the entire universe, and Vasudeva Datta is praying to the Supreme Lord that, oh my dear Lord, if you just deliver me, what difference is it going to make? It is like a small mustard seed. If a small mustard seed is absent from a whole heap of mustard seeds, it may not make much difference. But then the prayer of Vasudeva Datta is that I am ready to accept the sinful reactions of all the persons in the entire universe, and in turn you can liberate or you can deliver all the other people in the entire universe, and I am ready to bear the sinful reaction of all the other people. I mean, this is really what should I say, this is like really exemplary, is really outstanding, that how someone can even think that far, that one I'm willing to accept. I mean, when we think about our own sinful reactions, I mean, it is difficult to ascertain whether I'll be able to, how much time is it going to take for us to, really go through all those sinful activities, what to talk of, taking the sinful reactions of all the other people in the entire universe. But here is a Vaishnava, here is a devotee, and the extent of his compassion is so evident. Here, here Vasudeva Datta is like really going to a huge extent, and his compassion is like really exemplary, and he's ready to take the sinful reaction of everyone else in the entire creation, like that. So if we reflect on our own condition, it's like I mean, it's really pathetic when we compare ourselves to the consciousness of these exalted devotees like Prithu Maharaj, like Prahlad Maharaj, like Vidura, like Vasudeva Datta. I mean, we don't really stand anywhere, to be very honest. At least I don't stand anywhere compared to these exalted devotees. The nature of our mind is that our mind is still impure to a huge extent. And because the mind is impure, we are very much insecure. There is fear. Because we are not yet taken complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is a lot of insecurity within us as well. Now with that insecurity and with that impure mind, it is natural that we won't be able to desire the welfare of others, and that is for the very reason we don't feel that genuine compassion from within our own hearts, the way Prahlad Maharaj is feeling, the way Vidura is feeling for Dhritarashtra, the way Vasudeva Datta is feeling for all the sinful people in the entire universe. We don't have that compassion. I typically say that we are just work in progress people. We are just on the process. In the corporate life, in the corporate lingo, it is known as a WIP job, work in progress job. So yes, we may not have that compassion. So how is it possible that we will also, manifest such a quality of compassion? Because we can only give what we have within. If there is no genuine compassion, it is very difficult to actually give that genuine compassion. But then what we can do is we can serve those devotees who actually have that genuine compassion within their own hearts. And what better example could be there before all of us than the example of His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada has these three qualities. Srila Prabhupada is connected, he is connected very strongly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a very sublime manner. So Prabhupada is connected, he is actually compassionate, and we see the compassion of Srila Prabhupada even when he is on a cargo ship, even when he is undergoing those heart attacks and seasicknesses, amidst limits of material tribulations, amidst heights of material tribulations, Prabhupada is able to remember Krishna. Prabhupada is able to remember the purpose of his going to these United States, and this shows the extent of his connection and his compassion. Because we may speak very lofty words, but whenever things go wrong, the first thing that happens is that we tend to compromise on our connection. And not just that, our compassionate nature also goes for a toss. But then the example of a devotee like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada is that Prabhupada is connected in all circumstances, and he is compassionate to such great degrees. I mean, no matter how much we repeatedly enunciate the hardships, that Srila Prabhupada underwent in the initial days of establishing the Krishna consciousness movement, we can't glorify him sufficiently. So yes, when we may not have that genuine compassion within our hearts, but when we serve such devotees who have that genuine compassion, who are nicely connected to the Supreme Lord, and who are actually calling out to us to engage us also in the service of the Supreme Lord. So yes, Prabhupada is connected, Prabhupada is compassionate, and Prabhupada is calling out to us. And only because these devotees are dear to the Lord, there is some hope for us also. Because the Lord accepts anyone who is dear to his devotee. So there is, in this connection, there is a beautiful instance from the Ramayana that in the Yuddha Kand of Ramayana, when the Vanar Sena has assembled on the other side of Lanka, before the bridge has been built on the side of the ocean. So they're kind of wondering how to cross it, and the construction of the bridge and everything is about to begin. At one point of time, while on the other side in Lanka, different people have been trying to advise Ravana to give up his adamant nature and to return Sita, otherwise there will be disaster coming awaiting Sri Lanka. So at one point of time, even Vibhishan, he comes and he advises Ravana, and Ravana is like really infuriated that how can you be my brother and at the same time glorify my enemy? So you better get lost from here. So now hearing this, Vibhishan, he also understands that there is no use being here in Lanka anymore. Better I also surrender to Lord Sri Ramchandra. So Vibhishan is like, he has those mystical powers, and he flies across the ocean from Lanka to the now Rameshwaram. So when the Vanar Sena on the other side, they see Vibhishan coming through the Vibhishan airways, and immediately everyone is on alert, and everyone is like about to attack this Vibhishan, but Lord Sri Ramchandra, he stops everyone, and he says that no, let him come down and let us hear what he has to say. So Vibhishan comes and he surrenders to the Supreme Lord, and hearing his surrender, the Lord is very much pleased. And even before the war, the Supreme Lord actually coronates Vibhishan as the king of Lanka. Now this is an extreme degree of compassion for the Lord, because the war has not yet taken place, Ravana has not yet been killed, but as his compassionate reciprocation for the surrender of Vibhishan, the Lord coronates Vibhishan as the king of Lanka. So someone questions Sri Ramchandra that, Ravana has not yet been killed, and what if Ravana comes tomorrow and he surrenders unto you? What would you do? So that was kind of a tricky question before Lord Ramchandra. And hearing this, Lord Ramchandra, he says that I will make Ravana the king of Ayodhya, and I'll get back into the forest. That is the extent of the compassion of the Supreme Lord. So, and he also blesses Vibhishan. He gives this epic benediction at that point of time, that if anyone, with a sincere heart, actually, if anyone with a sincere heart just says once that, my dear Lord, from this day on, I am yours, I am willing to give myself completely to that very person. And he says, Sakrid eva prapannoya stavasmiti yachate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadami etam vratam mama. That is my vrata, that is my resolve, that if anyone surrenders unto me out of my compassion, I'm ready to give up myself unto him. But the story doesn't end here. Along with Vibhishan, there were 4 other associates who had come with Vibhishan. So someone may say that, the surrender was done only by Vibhishan, but why did the Lord accept all the other 4 associates also? So the Lord actually accepted these 4 associates of Vibhishan only because these 4 associates were actually habituated or very attached to serving Vibhishan. So similarly, when one is attached to serving the devotee of the Supreme Lord, one may not have developed a very strong attachment for the service of the Supreme Lord himself, but if one is attached to serving even the devotee of the Supreme Lord, the Lord very much accepts unto him. So similarly, as of now, we may not have elevated ourselves to great heights in Krishna consciousness, but when we engage ourselves nicely in service to Srila Prabhupada by these twofold processes, through our sadhana and through seva. So service to Srila Prabhupada is way of our own sadhana. So sadhana is of benefit to ourselves, and seva is of benefit to others. So sadhana, it is mentioned, why is sadhana important? Because we can give only what we have. So if we don't have proper sadhana, it won't be possible for us to extend the compassion of Srila Prabhupada to others. And similarly, seva is like extending that compassion to others. And when we serve such a exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord, through sadhana and seva, that is when eventually we will also see the light of the day. It is said that Krishna Surya Sam Maya Hoy Andhakar. The experience of Krishna consciousness, the experience of being Krishna conscious, being fully Krishna conscious, is like being in bright sunlight. And as of now, we are pretty much in illusion. We are pretty much engaged, not completely in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then, if we can also engage in the service of the pure devotee of the Lord, that is how eventually we will also become completely Krishna conscious and achieve the merciful glance of the Lord, the compassionate shower of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just to summarize what all we have been discussing so far, we began with discussing that how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Kripam Buddhi. He is an ocean of compassion, and because he is an ocean of compassion, his devotees, they also exhibit that quality of compassion, like Prithu Maharaj, like Prahlad Maharaj, like Vidura, like Vasudeva Datta. And we also saw the example of the clouds. Just like the clouds, they take the moisture from the ocean themselves, and then in the form of rains, they give back the water to people in general. So similarly, the devotees of the Lord, they imbibe this quality of compassion from the Supreme Lord, who is Kripa Ambudhi, and they are also engaged in showering compassion all over the world. And we saw the example of Prahlad Maharaj, that how Prahlad Maharaj is not just desiring welfare of just his own family members, but he is actually desiring the welfare of all living beings in this whole world. And the first desire of Prahlad Maharaj is, let there be good fortune for everyone. Let there be let there be swasti astu vishwasya. Let there be all good fortune unto everyone. And we saw thereafter that how this compassionate attitude is actually born of a security that one feels when one is under a sound shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what is the effect of being under this sound shelter of the Supreme Lord is that eventually the mind is cleansed. And we saw the cyclic process, that how this shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the sevenfold process of devotional service, beginning with hearing. So by proper hearing, the mind is cleansed, and with a cleansed mind, one is actually able to relish what one is hearing, the name, the descriptions of the name, form, qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And how this compassion is actually an ornament of a devotee. A devotee is not, because he is above the bodily platform, he is not very much concerned about mundane ornaments, but for a devotee, the ornament is actually a compassion. And our condition today is that because our minds are to a great degree impure, we are to a great degree still under illusion, and therefore there is not much of an compassion. But then when we serve other devotees who actually have that compassion, when one is connected to such devotees, then the Lord also considers our case. And we saw the example of Srila Prabhupada, that how Srila Prabhupada is not only soundly connected, not only is he compassionate, but he is also calling out to all of us to engage wholeheartedly with a genuine desire in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. With those words, I would like to pause here. If anyone has any questions, maybe we can take that. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, धन्यवाद प्रणाम। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रील गुरुदेव की जय।
हरे कृष्ण माता जी।
हरि बोल प्रभु जी, धन्यवाद प्रणाम। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रील गुरुदेव की जय। How nicely you explain about her Hiranyakashipu Vasudeva Datta story, and you explained that how we have to be compasser of this material soul, and such a nice bhajan also. Bhajahu re mana Srinanda Nandana Apaya Charana Ravindare. Thank you very much Prabhuji for your nectarine class. Please give your association regularly. Dandavad Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your kind words, Mataji.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Very nice class, and you gave nice examples and also nice instructions. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mata.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Very, very beautiful class, Prabhu. Very nice examples and nice bhajan, Prabhu. I really love the bhajan. Hari Bol. So sweet, Prabhu. It was like Nectarian voice, Prabhu. Very beautiful. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Mata.
Hare Krishna. Is there anybody having any questions for Prabhuji? Okay. Thank you once again, Prabhuji, for such a beautiful class. We are looking forward for your association in future, Prabhuji. If there are no more questions, we would like to end the call here by offering obeisances to Prabhuji and all the devotees. Vancha kalpatarobhya पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रीनाथ ठाकुर की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। चैतन्य प्रभु जी की जय। थैंक यू सो मच प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Very much.